I'm an activist, and that's why I've been called to speak to you here today. I've been an activist since I was 15 years old. I started working with the Canadian Red Cross, focusing on global issues, and after that I moved on to international activism, and that's what I do now. I focus on international climate change negotiations, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to travel the world, and I've worked with amazing youth and NGOs, and basically my whole life has been a whirlwind. The main thing I'd like to talk to you about today is the notion of fear. And to me, fear has been a big part of my journey as an activist in the last few years, because I've noticed that it's actually the biggest thing stopping us from achieving the world we want to achieve. Fear has become a motivator for activism. We're told to be terrified of the future. We're told to be terrified of the people around us doing bad things, and that is the fear that's supposed to drive us to action. I was at the UN last year, and I was writing a speech or something, a policy brief, and I was trying to talk about the world I wanted to live in, and the policies I wanted to see passed so that I could live in that world for myself and my children. And a fellow activist came up to me and said, "Hey, we need some stronger language in there." And I was like, "What kind of stronger language?" And they were like, write something like, "Climate change will burn your children to a crisp, and in 20 years, you will probably be dead." And I thought, okay, that's interesting, because it's true that climate change is a huge issue, and I would know this, and my work has been centered around it for years now. But why do we have a vision of the future as something terrifying? Why don't we have a vision of the future as something positive that we want to move towards and actually be motivated to work towards? Fear, when it's presented to us like that, breaks the connection between natural human compassion, when we connect to an issue, and what we actually do about that issue. It forces us to move forward based on a negative view rather than a positive one. It works as blackmail rather than incentive. And it becomes a club. I've had so much discourse in the climate change work I've done where if you don't show terror, and if you don't show a sort of doomsday scenario for your future, you don't belong in the club. You don't really care about the issue. And I'd really like to fight against that, because I think that undermines the entire notion of activists and of justice, the bottom line, justice. So fear, in addition to being a divider, actually serves to flatten the individual. This is not to undermine the really heavy and weighty issues that we're facing in our future. We're youth, and we're going to see a bunch of really, really big changes in our world in the next 20, 30 years, in our lifetimes. And those are heavy, often crippling things. But I would argue that those are things not to be approached with fear, but rather with motivation and compassion. So I would ask you, if you see the future as something like this, if you want to see the future as something like this, or if you'd rather view it as something like this and work towards this, are you running away from this, or are you running towards this? And I think that's a very key distinction to make. So if there's a message I'd like you to take away, it's that, do not be afraid. Stay true to yourself. Don't let fear bog you down. And don't be scared. Yes, we're in a lot of trouble in the next few years. There's a lot of work cut out for us. But you are a complex and diverse individual. You have a lot to offer. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Thank you.